Awesome. All right. I am delighted to welcome back onto the First Time Facilitator podcast. We all know him as the rock star of consulting, the $1 million consultant, Alan Weiss. Thanks for coming back.
Always a pleasure, Leanne. Always a pleasure.
Excellent. Hey, Alan, I saw recently, was it earlier this week that you celebrated your 53rd wedding anniversary with Maria?
Yes, 2 days ago. That's correct.
Yeah, congrats on that. And the reason I'm bringing up anniversaries is it's our 1 year podcast anniversary. So you appeared on the show 12 months ago. And since that conversation, I think I brought up your name like every day in conversation, just sharing a quote. We're all here with our books. We'll wave them at the screen. So one thing that you spoke about, one thing that you mentioned on the show last year was just the whole concept of value-based pricing. And the first question I want to kick off with is something from your book, The Consulting Bible. And you give an example around never bundle, always unbundle. And you talk about your friend Paul, who is in telesales training, and he runs like 2.5-day programs. He does all this stuff. He charges $7,500. You, though, would charge $75,000 for the same thing. Can you tell us what is the difference between what you do and what Paul does?
Sure. It's hard to believe it was a year ago that I was first with you. Holy smokes. Look, here's the difference.
What does that mean? Is that good or bad?
I don't think it's good or bad. I just think that time, people say, I'm going to get around to it. Well, you better get around to it now. If not now, when? Because here we are a year later. And people have told me, everything from I'm going to implement value-based fees. I'm going to go into a new market. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to go get this degree. I'm going to write a book. And 2 years later, they're still talking that way. So I'm always amazed by, time has elasticity. We can talk about that later. Anyway, back to your point. People tend to bundle. They tend to throw everything but the kitchen sink in because they have low self-esteem. And so they're trying to say to the client, hey, look, here's everything I can do. Client says, do the windows, you do the windows, right? I've never seen a plumber who came to my house to fix a leak to tell me, while I'm here, I'm going to caulk all the tile. That's not what a plumber does, because a plumber is smarter than most consultants. So a plumber says, here's what I'm going to do and fixes things. Now, a plumber is stupider than consultants because the plumber charges, $65 an hour. Instead of saying, what's it worth to have this leak stopped, right? I can change anybody's pricing principles. But the fact is that somebody like Paul was so desperate to get sales and so disbelieving in his own abilities that he kept piling on and piling on and piling on until the client couldn't say no. But I don't exaggerate too much when I talk about doing the windows. And so consultants have to have peer level relationships. You own this company. You're an executive in a large firm. I'm an expert in what I do with peers. Let's talk about whether we're right for each other.
This concept of self-worth, I think as I'm reading the Consulting Bible, as I'm reading all of your books, and you've even written a book about building this in terms of your legacy, life storming, they all have that same sort of theme. I've got a question from Jade, who's in Brisbane that couldn't be here. It's quite late. So this is way past my bedtime. So she mentions that she says, we live in a world where we are conditioned to undervalue ourselves and we're bombarded with messages that we aren't enough. What is the antidote to a chronic lack of self-belief and underpricing and undervaluing what we have to offer?
First of all, Jane, you better get out of Brisbane because you got the Olympics coming in 2032 and you're going to be in debt for the next 20 years. Okay, so you're celebrating the wrong thing. It's my observation. But look, here's the issue. We carry baggage that we didn't pack. And so we still hear things our parents told us, our siblings told us, or some teacher told us that even if it were true at the time is no longer true. And it's insufficient to simply drop the baggage. You got to throw it off the train. Because if you just drop it, it's traveling as fast as you are. You got to throw it off the train, maybe risk killing a cow in the countryside, who knows, but get it off and then pack your own bags. So the problem is that we live with these self-limiting beliefs that undermine ourselves. Now think about the difference. And if you have kids, you have siblings, whatever it is, with whom you relate. If a kid makes an error on the ball field and you say, you're pretty awkward out there, that's pretty devastating. If you say, that was a tough kick, nobody could have done that, don't worry about it, that's a completely different situation. If a kid comes home with a high score on a test and you say, well, you got lucky with that, it's different from saying, hey, you're a scholar. And so my point to you is you have to isolate negatives and generalize positives. And we tend to do the opposite. I'm a lousy marketer. You don't get one sale and you're a lousy marketer. Instead of at this time, in this place, with this person, I'd make a sale. So we have to stop isolating the positives and generalizing the negatives. I also have a little routine I tell people to do, and that is in the morning when you get up, take 90 seconds and talk about 3 positive things you're going to do. Personal, professional. You're going to clean out the garage. You're going to make 2 referral calls, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, before you go to sleep, take 90 seconds and talk about 3 positive things you did. It doesn't have to be the same things. I called my brother. I owed him a call. I did clean out the garage. I did this. Start your day with positives, end your day with positives, because we're overwhelmed otherwise with negatives. But we're in control of this, and we need to take more control of it. But if you think about it, we're all listening to voices from the distant past. You got to throw that bag off the train.
Mm. And it does sort of remind me of feedback. And you're in a group of people that we talk about baggage, like we've been brought up thinking, oh, if I run this workshop and I do this tick sheet and I get feedback and 99% of it's really great, but the 1%'s awful, then like we take that on board. I just want to read another quote from your book before I pass to Prina. This made me laugh.
Whoa. Can I comment on that, what you just said?
I think it might be related to this quote, but of course you can. And then I'll read your quote, which might actually emphasize.
Anybody who's going through life looking at smile sheets and waiting for standing ovations, needs to have their head turned around, because I'm hired to make people uncomfortable. I'm not hired to get standing ovations. And the thing is, you have to please the buyer, not the audience. I know this is heresy, right? But I'm in the Hall of Fame of the National Speakers Association. And I'm telling you this, it's not about the audience, it's about the buyer. And we often, like you say, we pat ourselves on the back. We got all 10s. It's meaningless. Go ahead.
I mean, that's sort of, it really underpins the point. So what you mentioned in your book is you say, anyone who tells you that the only thing you can do about feedback is to listen to it is a dolt. You can do something about it. You can ignore most of it. So I read that like, oh, that's that. Oh, like, I physically had some type of reaction. And I want to move to Prina now, who has got a question around you being saying things that are a little bit different to what we are used to hearing. Over to you, Prina.
Alan, linking back to what you just said about being honest in relation to working with your clients, I've got my question ready. So many consultants feel uncomfortable opposing or rejecting the popular opinion, so not to rock the boat. But can you tell us a little bit more about your concept of contrarian consulting?
Well, let me say 2 things. The first is this. Empathy is understanding how someone is feeling. Sympathy is feeling sorry for them. I believe that tough love is what you provide with clients, which is empathy without sympathy. I understand where you are. I don't feel sorry for you. I'm going to help you. That's tough love. So a lot of times I'm telling someone, fire this person. You'll do them a favor, but stop acting like a savior where no one can be fired under your watch, right? And so that's what tough love is about. And that's how you oppose what the current theme song is. Now, in terms of contrarianism, I did this originally to get noticed. I got fired. I was standing out there with 250,000 other independent consultants. I said, how do I get noticed? And quality control and lean and all this kind of crap was popular at the time. And so I just took it on and I said, it's ridiculous. You're having secretaries reorganize their drawers. How much of a tolerance do you need? And people started to pick that up because people want some fresh air. And then I just started to reverse everything. And because I can defend almost any position I want to take. And that's what got me focus. But if you think about it, everybody, individuals, organizations, we live with a mythology in many cases, and we don't challenge it. And you have to challenge the mythology. Leaders have to have commitment, not compliance. No. A lot of times a leader should simply force compliance. We should force compliance with vaccinations right now and not worry so much about commitment. There's a good example, and especially in Australia. So same thing here in the US. So that's what I'm talking about, and that's what we have to challenge.
Brilliant. Can I add another question to tag on to that? Quick one.
No, but you can say brilliant again.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Stepping back a little bit, so you're working with the client, you are being very honest, and it's that tough love aspect that you bring, which your clients completely respect you for. At the beginning of your relationship, do you have terms or conditions or agreements in terms of the way that you are working with your client, or do people just know you and know what they're going to expect?
There's a term in computers, I think, or technology, what you see is what you get. And so when I'm building a relationship with you prior to us doing business together, because I believe in a trusting relationship first. What you see is what you get. And so if we're casually talking and you say, well, my business model, is feet on the street and so on, I'll say, well, you can't live with that much longer, can you? And so I'm going to know immediately, and that person's going to, here's who we are. And so if they hire me, they know what they get. So I don't suddenly surprise them, but I do believe that you can't just walk in like that. You've got to build the relationship that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think, Alan, you've mentioned on one of our coaching calls, you spoke about having, when you're negotiating a deal, people can sense the desperation sometimes if you are just really eager with any terms and conditions. And so you're setting that scene up front. I might move to Joe now. Joe, you got a question related to this topic as well.
Yeah, Alan, in preparing for tonight, I was thinking about a comment that I hear regularly and that I've read regularly, which is all around the idea that we need to seed what we sell and to seed what we're going to deliver next and what we can do for the client next whilst we're delivering something at the moment. So, we're delivering a workshop. We should be seeding the other kinds of work that we do for that might be suitable for that client. How does that link with what you just said around the fact that it's the buyer, not the audience, that we are, pitching ourselves to and selling ourselves to, and who we're trying to get happy with our services to repurchase them again in the future?
Well, we're all whole people, and we shouldn't let or expect that the buyer just sees a slice of us. I learned this early on. I had a client for 2 years here in Connecticut, CEO of an insurance company, and we did beautiful work together. He comes to me one day and he says, Alan, I'm in charge of finding a speaker for the American Council of Life Insurance for their big annual convention. Who would you recommend as a speaker? And I said, I'm a speaker. He said, Alan, come on, you just want the work, but who would you recommend? Well, he didn't know anything about me, right? Except what I was doing for him. And I realized that was a fundamental error on my part. So I believe that we should know each other as whole people. And I explain to clients the gamut of what I do. You see, I am an expert, as are you, and my expertise can be delivered in a gamut, in a wide array of possibilities. I can speak, I can write, I can consult, I can coach, yada, yada, yada. And so with the client, I decide what the best transmission of that is. But as you're deciding among those, the client gets a feel for the panoply of what you can do. And I believe in shameless promotion. If you don't blow your own horn, there is no music.
So how does that work if you're delivering, if the client hires you to deliver a workshop for its leadership team, but that particular person who's the buyer isn't in the audience? So is it still worthwhile seeding all of the other things that you do in that delivery, or is it just not worth your time?
Well, let me start by being contrarian. You should never do a workshop for a leadership team. Just let me start there. I'm going to tell you why, though. I'm not being cute. If somebody says, I want a workshop for my leadership team, or I want my executive assistant coach for 2 weeks, whatever it is, you immediately have to ask a question, which is why? And when you ask why, you raise the issue, you raise the level of decision. Usually a workshop for a leadership team is worthless, not worth anything. So I'm asking why? What are you trying to accomplish? Because it's probably best going to be done through a combination of coaching and training and this and that and the other thing. So that's number one. Number two, if the buyer isn't in the room, which I understand is your point about the course you're delivering, I would have an agreement before I walked into the room that you're going to debrief with the buyer. And you say, and this phrase is very important for everyone, let me tell you how I work. And so you say to whomever, let me tell you how I work. When I finish a course, a workshop, a seminar, I have to debrief with whoever it is, with the vice president, the CEO, the economic buyer, because too much training simply occurs in a vacuum. And I have to relate to him or to her what occurred, what my reactions are, given my experience with companies, and what probably should happen next.
Can I add on to that? There's been some discussion amongst facilitators and workshop providers around this idea of, offering 3 prices, for example, for services, so you've got your gold, silver, bronze, if you want to go to that, token kind of comment that we usually use. And sometimes there is the idea of offering a debrief as an extra. So are you suggesting that we never do that we always say that that's just part of a deal?
Yes, because it's a marketing device. And so you don't see, if you say it's an extra, they have a reason to turn it down based on cost. If you
Yes.
say it's complementary and it's very important, it's part of what I do, this is how I work, they can't turn it down.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan. And something that I'm going to keep bringing up some of the things that we've been talking about, something you've pulled up from me, and I think that I'm also now pulling up with this group is our default to training to solve every problem that is presented to us. And again, prior to meeting you last year, my economic buyer, I thought was the HR person, and I've got Yoka in South Africa. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that right now. Yoka, are you happy for me to pass to you and ask a question around getting that meeting with the economic buyer?
Yes. Hi, Alan. We were chatting over email the other day, so now you get to see me again. So my question to you is, you're always saying that we shouldn't be selling to HR, exactly what Leanne just said, because they're not the economic buyers. How do we open more doors with those economic buyers?
Well, first of all, you stop talking to HR. That's the important thing. I mean, you can use them as a stepping stone to meet someone, but don't agree to talk to them. Once you agree to talk to them, you're in quicksand, you're done. Because even if you manage to get out of there, you're going to be associated with HR. And HR stands for hardly relevant. And so you do not want to be associated with them. You want to be associated on executive level. So here's the phrase again. Let me tell you how I work. I work with the person who owns the project, the person who has the funds to make the investment, who has the fiduciary responsibility, however you want to phrase it. Because, and here's the operative word, ethically, I have to understand the expectations of the person making the investment. I have to make sure I can meet that person's expectations, and I have to make sure that we're compatible, simpatico, we can work together. And once you say ethically, most people will cave and say, well, okay, I'll set something up. But some won't. And they say, well, I've been tasked, this is an HR term, I've been tasked, to evaluate vendors. And you say, I'm not a vendor, so that doesn't matter. But you can't give anything to these people. You cannot do this. They are not buyers. They have less of a function than an appendix. They're a vestigial organ. And so you have to look in every client, you have to look for the buyer. Because that's the level at which you want not only the immediate business, but also referral business. And in my 30 years of consulting for some of the largest organizations in the world, most powerful people in the world, I've only found two human resources people who were powerful.
That's insane.
Well,
so
I'll tell you something else.
where,
if I could just,
yeah.
Let me give you a statistic. You go back 10 years and you find me one senior human resources person who was promoted to CEO in a Fortune 1000 company. Actuaries, yes. Vice presidents of sales, yes. Vice presidents of finance, yes. In some case, janitors, never an HR person. Okay, go ahead with your question.
Yoka, can I jump in? I just wanted to ask you to add to that, Alan. I had a recent example where it was a director of a company that reached out to us, and they had seen us present something and wanted us to do it for their company. But what happened was that they got their HR person, their top HR person, to reach out to us and to make that happen. But it was still asking for a proposal. Do you think in that instance where you've kind of got the tap on the shoulder from the director, you still need to be, is it okay to then do that arrangement with the HR? Let me just tell you, to be completely honest, we did do the arrangement with the HR person and they came back and said yes. But I just wonder now if I should have taken a different approach.
Yes, you should have. So, Joanne, you're the HR person. And I would say to you, Joanne, I'm very, very pleased you reached out. I understand the CEO asked you to contact us. I'm very happy about that. Let me tell you how we work. I need to talk to the CEO because I need to hear from his or her lips exactly what's expected. Ethically, that's very important. And once I hear that, and we both agree it's compatible, then I'm happy to work with you on implementation. And if you're working with the CEO and the CEO says, I'd like you to see my HR person, you say, this is a strategic decision that you have to make. Whether or not to do it is your decision. How we do it, you can involve your HR person. But whether we do it is up to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Yoka, did you have a follow-up question?
Alan, I know that you do a lot of professional speaking. I've seen you also do some free gigs like in South Africa, but I wanted to know where do CEOs hang out? if we had to market or get events to speak where they would hear us and where we could network and have opportunities to meet them, where would you advise us to be? Or would it be more writing?
Okay, so are you asking me where you should be to get speaking engagements?
Both.
Both what?
Speaking
Both
and
what?
facilitation. So
Okay,
the
all right.
intention is to, if you hang out there, so whether you are speaking, writing, or engaging, where the audience would be, where you could then network to get, so that you can meet the buyers to start having the conversations.
All right. Well, look, there are 5 ways to get short-term business, right? 5 ways. So one is referral business. And that means you call everyone you know and you say to them, hey, here's the value I'm providing. We know each other. I'd love to get your opinion on where you think I should be going with this. And by the way, I'd like to meet so-and-so. Could you introduce me? All right. So, I mean, I do a whole thing on referral business, but referral business is number 1. A second thing is speaking. But you want to speak in front of groups where you have buyers and recommenders in the audience, just as you said. So, I spoke in front of something called the Cattle and Goat Herders Association once in Las Vegas. And, there are no buyers in the audience, but they pay me $35,000. And so I'll do that, right? But normally, like I said before, the American Council of Life Insurance, these are all CEOs. Okay, so that's speaking. And number 3 is you want to network. And you want to network, though, in places where it's not like a trade association where everybody's networking. You want to go to a fundraiser, like a charity fundraiser, an arts group fundraiser, something like that, where movers and shakers are on the boards. They're big donors, and you automatically appear because you're there with them. Those are good places to network. Okay. The 4th thing is you want to publish, and that could range from blogging to newsletters to guest columns and so forth. I mean, books are great. I've written 60, but a book is a year out. 8 months or a year out. But short term, write an ebook. If you should be able to turn out an ebook in a week. Okay, I can do it in a day, but certainly a month, one page a day for a month, is certainly doable. And then the 5th thing is what I call a hosted event, and that means you do a free webinar, something like this, and you invite the right people, and you're going to do 40 minutes on post-pandemic strategy. You're going to do 40 minutes on retaining talent when everybody's looking to change their jobs and things like this. So those are the 5 ways where you meet people, you get short-term cash, short-term business, and they're very viable. And I've got people all over the world doing this. But as I said at the outset, you can't tell me I'm going to get to it. You have to do it.
Yeah. I love that quote, if not now, when. Hey, just speaking of free events, we got a question from Melanie Loy, who's also in the 2032 Olympic City of Brisbane. She says, I hear and see a lot of people offering free webinars, etc., to market their services. Has that built a culture of expectation around free services? At what point do we stop offering the freebies?
Well, at what point do you stop offering freebies? I think you have to decide to what extent you want to market and to what extent you want to make money. Sometimes they're synonymous. You can get a lot of money for a speech and there are buyers in the audience. But if you're hosting something, I think you have to make up your mind, because if you want to make money, you've got to charge, a couple of $1,000s for people to be there. But if you want to market, I would simply charge something like $100 and give it to charity, which keeps out people from just drifting in. And it's a light fee. And you're making it clear, I'm not collecting $100 for myself. I'm going to give it to a charity. But if people pay $100, they tend to be there. And I especially like breakfasts when you can get together physically. I like a breakfast from 7:30 to 9. You invite maybe 40 people, perhaps 12 or 15 accept, and you take 15 minutes for people to come in and get some food. You talk about your views and intellectual property for 10 minutes. You put them in small groups to work on an issue that's facing everybody. You debrief, and then you summarize the day, and they go back to their offices for 9 o'clock. And what you have here is some people who will give you a card and say, this was great, I'd love to hear more. So you immediately follow up with them. The second thing is you have people who were there who had a good time who didn't give you their card, and you call them and you say, I'm glad you came. I know some things are best discussed privately, not in a group. I'm happy to do that. Do you want to meet privately? And then thirdly, you send a summary of the meeting to everyone you invited who didn't come. And you say, I'm sorry you couldn't make it. Here's what you missed. If you want to discuss it, I'm happy to speak. And so you have 3 sources of income from that hosted event, which would probably cost you maybe $1,500. So that's what I like to see happen. And that's clearly a marketing event, not a money-making event. at least immediately.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, Lena, we were talking about that in our catch up yesterday, was a bit of an agenda around a networking breakfast like that. So thanks for sharing your approach to it.
It was amazing. Yeah, thank you very much.
Did you have a follow-up question, Lena, for Alan?
Maybe if you would like to give us the agenda of the meeting, of the phone call that you have with the people that didn't give you the business card, that would be lovely to hear. What I got from Liana is that you just ask questions, okay, what would you like? And at the end, you go towards, let's make business together. But if you have a specific agenda or a specific strategy, I'd very much like to hear it.
So, Lena, in other words, this is the person who gave you the card, right? And now you made the appointment to be with them. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
When you sit down with them, I would start by saying something like this. I'm really happy you could attend the session. What prompted you to ask me to contact you again and to pick up the discussion? And I'd listen for what they're talking about. And I'd ask a couple of questions and I would move them toward what their key issues were. So whenever you're talking to anyone, let's just say it's an hour meeting, just for simplicity's sake. The first 10 to 15 minutes are relationship building. This is what I said before, what you see is what you get, okay? The second 10 to 15 minutes is searching out the issues that are important to them. And don't forget, today, it's not about solving problems. It's not about fixing things. It's about improvement. It's about innovation. It's a very different value set today. So the third 10 to 15 minutes are what I call conceptual agreement. What are the objectives for a possible project? What are the measures of success? What's the value that will be generated? Because those things will go into proposal. And then the final 10 to 15 minutes is what I call pouring cement, which means, is there anything we haven't discussed other than fees that you'd like to talk about that might prevent you from going ahead with the project? Because I'll have a proposal on your desk tomorrow. And so I want to make sure, is there anyone else who needs to be part of this decision, especially with a small business? And so if you add that up, it's 40 to 60 minutes. And those are the four parts of what I call conversion. And then they get the proposal rapidly. You follow up a day after that, and you say, which option do you want to pursue? Boom, boom, boom.
Very clear, very boom, boom, boom. First steps. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I love that the meeting is actually where you convert them. The proposal doesn't convert. The proposal's just, I think you call it part of your implementation phase. Just a question, Alan, have you ever sent a proposal and when you've clicked submit, or actually, I know you physically post hard copies as well, have you ever just gone, oh my gosh, that's too high? Like cringe to yourself, or is that
no, that's an esteem issue. No, I've never cringed. Yeah. I mean, my feeling is if they take option one, they're going to walk away saying I got a good deal, and I'm going to walk away saying I was well paid. It's a win-win. If they pick option two and option three, it's even better. So if you give three options, though, people generally settle on option two, just psychologically. That's what they tend to do. And this choice of yeses is very, very powerful. But I've never cringed about being afraid I charge too much, because it doesn't bother me if I don't get the business. That's not a defeat. It's not a character problem. It's not my self-worth at stake here. All right. Because my feeling is it's your loss.
Yeah, that's good. Not being attached to the outcome and not basing your worth on that. Actually, I do have a question from my husband, Chris, before I move to Yoka. He keeps asking me when I'm going to buy my first Bentley. When does that happen?
Well, what you need to do is work with me more closely and invest a little more. Listen, when I wrote $1 Million Consulting, which came out in '92, for the next 4 years, I consulted for free with people because I was doing corporate work. But people would come to me like you, and my ego said, "Oh my God, they're coming to me. They loved the book." And then I found I was spending more time with them than with my corporate clients. So I said to my wife, "I'm going to launch a mentor program." And she said, "Really? What's that going to be like?" I said, "Well, I'm going to do this." She said, "Well, how much are you going to charge?" I said, $3,500. She said, "What kind of market research did you do to come up with $3,500? And I said, "It's the monthly lease on my Ferrari. And if I get 12 people, it pays for the Ferrari." And I had 3 Ferraris and an Aston and 7 Bentleys. And my second Rolls is on the Atlantic right now sailing over here. Oh, and so if you have confidence, now I'm not demanding you like cars. I happen to like cars, right? I like cigars. I don't demand you like cigars. But the fact is, if you have confidence in yourself, there's nothing wrong with rewarding yourself.
Here, yeah, couldn't agree more with that. Yoka, you had a question around, I was going back to the earlier conversation around meeting up with a potential client and research.
Yes, Alan, what type of research do we need to do upfront before meeting the buyer?
No, right. Are you all right? Going to write this down? Yeah. Okay. 0. You want to know why?
Yes.
What you have to be conversant in what's happening in the world around you. And so in my case here in the States, and in fact, wherever I go, including Australia, I read the Wall Street Journal every single day. And if I can't get it for a certain reason, I'll read it the next, I'll read the back issues. I read the Wall Street Journal every day. For some people, it's the Financial Times, yada, yada. But I want to know what's going on in the world around me. And so here's what I'm talking about, because I'm not being flippant about zero. I was speaking for some hospital somewhere in the Midwest, and they demanded I go to a board reception before, which I loathe, but they demanded that I went. And so I'm introduced to a guy who owns the largest trucking firm in the state of Missouri and the 7th largest in the country. And I had read the day before that Consolidated Freight, which is the 2nd largest freight trucking company in the US, declared bankruptcy. And I said to him, what does the Consolidated Freight bankruptcy mean to you? And he spoke for 30 minutes. This is what I mean by being conversant with what's going on around you. If you can name examples, if you know how something over here might affect something over there, that's all you need. But I am not going to try, when I worked for Mercedes, I didn't try to study up on Mercedes automobiles. They know more than I'll ever know. That's not the point. But what I did tell them was, what's your service like in your stores? They call the dealership stores. And they said, well, Lexus is eating our lunch. I said, what do you think that is? That's the discussion. It's not how to make better brake pads.
Brilliant, brilliant.
It's also a bit of a skill of yours, Alan, that I don't know if you've developed it over time, but even reading, I think I've brought this up with you before, reading the book, The Martial Arts of Language. So I can read that and I can take it in, but then it's another thing where I'm having a conversation, having to stay present and to remember the line or the objection response. How do we get better at being so good in those conversations?
Empty your head. You're too worried about the script. You're too worried about what the other person might say. You're too worried about, am I doing a good job? How will I counter this? What will I say? Just empty your head and stay in the moment. And when you do that, you can bring in examples. Oh, yeah, that triggers something. But if you're too concerned with where the conversation's going, how you want to control it, you can't handle all that information. I want to tell you something funny. You keep quoting my books. I was on stage once talking about strategy, and I walked up stage and a woman was waiting for me. And she said, what do you think about this approach to strategy? I said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Where'd you get it? She said, I read it in one of your books. I said, oh, that approach.
I might just start quoting random things at you and just going, yeah, you've definitely said that. Page 45. Hey, Gwynel's over in Europe. Gwynel, you've got a question for Alan.
Yes, I would like to know how we can apply your techniques in the new tech sector, and also especially in different cultural environments like what we can encounter in Western Europe. For example, in Belgium, maybe there is 3 different communities, 3 different languages, 2 different mindsets, and it's just a nightmare.
Well, look, the empirical fact is that human beings are more alike than unalike. I've been to 63 countries. And if you read the psychologists and the sociologists and the anthropologists, people are 98% alike. And so they speak different languages. They have some different cultures. They have some different beliefs. However, they all smile, they all frown, they all cry. They all want to succeed for the most part. And so if you leave out the psychopaths, the fact is you have to focus on what's common in the human experience. And what's common in the human experience is wanting to be better, is wanting to learn, is wanting to contribute, is wanting to take care of family, and so forth and so on, take advantage of opportunities, and so on. So I've never found that to be a problem. You have to overcome things like language, obviously, but there are simultaneous translations or things you can do. You can also get subcontractors who speak different languages. When I worked in Japan, they told me that, one of my practices, I use a lot of small groups, and they said, you can't do that because people will not put themselves on the line in front of colleagues. But what I did was I simply named a spokesperson for the group. So when the spokesperson got up, It wasn't his or her opinion. It was the consensus of the group, and that made everybody comfortable. So you can make adjustments. In Australia, one of the funniest adjustments I have to make is people have a tendency just to shout things out. Australians, I'm a New Yorker, right? And Australians are really like New Yorkers, except they talk a little bit funny. So I'm making this one speech, and this guy in the back shouts out, my wife is there, but a guy shouts out, "If it weren't for your wife, you'd have no material," he says to me, just like that. And I immediately said to him, "Sure I would. I could talk about people who just shout things out in the audience." So you make these adjustments. People are culturally, you make these adjustments.
The Aussies would have loved you for that too, that shouting out from the audience comment, because you engage with us and that's what we enjoy. So
I love Australians because you can have a vicious argument and they'll say, "Okay, mate, let's have a beer."
yeah.
It's never personal. It never lasts. And they tell you what they think. I mean, I love that. That gets you through the day much faster.
Yeah.
So in fact, Australia is a English-speaking version of Belgium. We can have an argument and then have a beer. It's perfect.
That's
I have to
perfect.
come one day.
Yeah, but you've got to bring your beers over, because I think they're like
With pleasure.
16% or something anyway.
For the problem with Australians is I think they have real lobsters and they don't.
Oh, that's very contrarian, actually.
You have some kind of aquatic scorpion. But
we have something called the cherubin. I'll send you a link through. It's pretty exotic in the northwest of Australia. The
I'm
cherubin.
living here with New England lobsters. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
lobsters.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, I've got one more question from Jade about positioning here. So she says, we talk about offering and positioning our services to solve a problem. Have you noticed themes in what people's, or I would say more companies' main problems are? I think I remember hearing on a podcast once, and you said it's one of 8 or 12 things. It's this. Like it's usually like a category of.
Yeah, they're not really problems, they're issues. And I identified, these might be on my site, in fact. Excuse me. Allergies. I said, look, in my experience, there are 11 things that go wrong in companies. And sometimes I switch them around, but I'll give you an example. Companies tend to look for blame instead of cause. Companies put in contingent actions and fail to consider preventive actions. Companies don't understand that the leader, every time the leader says something, there are 2 messages, what they're saying and then how they send it. Companies don't understand that decisions and problems and plans are 3 distinctly different things with different starting points, and so on and so forth. And so, I mean, I can actually hear a buyer for the first time, and I could say to the buyer, "Okay, what you have is number 3, 7, and 9. That'll be $100,000." But I can't do that. But I'm recognizing what's going on, and I know where to orient myself. For example, and this is part of the mythology that we talked about too. People think that when you have attrition, people leave companies. Nobody leaves companies, they leave bosses. And once you understand that distinction, bang, you're in. Most people, especially HR, will say, well, we have an attrition problem. We need to change the comp plan. We need to give people more agency. People have to need that. No. You just have to fire 2 guys who everybody hates.
So I want to move to Gozzi's got a question, but just on that, let's just say, do you give that advice about firing those 2 people after you've got the contract? So you're hearing you're hearing the scenario, you sign
after.
But in the proposal, you just say, I'll sort this problem out, but you don't actually define the methodology at all.
So look, as long as you talk about what you're marketing, once you talk about how you're consulting for free. And so I would say, okay, you have a nutrition problem, right? We do. You'd like to cut the attrition problem, right? We would. Do you think it's fair that if we work together on this, we could cut the attrition by 30% and get it slightly below industry average? We do. What would that save you? About $1.5 million a year. Okay, I'll put a proposal together. I mean, it's that simple. And my option 1 is going to be 150,000, which is a 10-to-1 return. And then I'm going to, but see what happens then is I'm not going to look for some programmatic intervention. I'm going to find out where these people are coming from who are leaving. And I will bet you dollars to donuts that they're coming from just 1 or 2 places.
So true.
But how do you put this in the proposal? So what is the methodology in the proposal, or what is the promise in the proposal then?
That will cut attrition by 30%. So it'll be slightly under industry average.
Without any how.
Without any how, right? I mean, I might say things like, I'll be interviewing your people, I'll conduct this, I'll conduct that, but I'll basically be making observations. I'll be looking at, I might be talking to people who left if they're willing to talk to me. I'll say broad things like that.
Okay.
We've got broad and then we got boom, boom, boom. Okay, so that's all you need to remember from today, Lena. Gozia, over to you. You've been nice and patient. Thank you.
Hi, Alan.
Hi.
My question is this. You are obviously light years ahead of us in your career. So I would like you to go back in time and tell us how you went from good to great, because many of us are at a stage in our careers where charging 1,500 for an hour's keynote is a challenge. So how do you go from that to 35,000 or possibly more?
Well, first of all, I hate good to great because I don't know what it means. Some people are already great. And even if you're great, you could still be better. So I just, put that down. So I just don't like the concept. It's like re-engineering and things like this. People grab it, doesn't mean anything. Anyway, let me answer your question. You have to be fearless. And be absolutely fearless. You can't be afraid of being turned down. You can't be afraid of putting a case forward. You can't be afraid of saying, I can help you. And so you have to understand what I said to Leanne before. A rejection is part of this business as not part of self-worth. Secondly, this is the marketing business. We might all be consultants and coaches and so on, but this is the marketing business. And so there are people who are average consultants, but brilliant marketers doing well. There are people who are brilliant consultants, but poor marketers are doing poorly. There are people who are excellent consultants and excellent marketers who are doing great. And so you have to learn the marketing skills. And to go back to Leanne's question about the Bentley, this is what I teach people. I teach people how to market these skills and abilities and traits they already possess. It's not a question of learning how to consult better. It's a question of learning how to market better. It's a big difference. The second thing is that you have to build your brand. And so I advocate that people do that within a comfort zone to begin with. I am a lousy networker. I hate small talk. I hate schmoozing. I don't network. It's just one of 5 things. So I tend not to do that. However, I'm a great writer. And so I've written 60 plus books or in 15 languages, and I'm still writing books. I had 4 come out this year. There'll be at least 1 or 2 next year. This is what I do. I'm a great speaker. And so I get up and I speak. And this is how people hear me. And this is how I build my brand. And this is part of the shameless promotion I talked about. And so if you go to my website, you're going to find high class. You're going to find the best of the best. And I tell people, like I said to Leanne, you want to achieve something, then work with me. That's how you do it. I'm the best there is. And I told my corporate clients, I'm the best there is. So one guy said to me, Vice President, we couldn't figure out how to work together. He said, well, come around Monday. He said, we'll put a project together. I said, about what? He said, I don't know, but we need smart people here and you're smart. You keep putting yourself forward. You never hide your talents. You're never obsequious. You're never subordinate to the buyer. And you control all that. And we tend to give away control and we have to seize control.
And in your experience, how long does it take, if you work with someone, how long does it take them to achieve what they set out to achieve with you?
Well, let's call this a journey and not to achieve a given thing. But I would say that within 3 months, within 90 days, you should be changing your approach to the market as required. You should be raising your fees. You should have identify your ideal buyer and how to reach them and how they reach you and so forth. And then in the next 90 days, you should be you should have a self-sustaining business model that will continue to grow. Because if you're not growing, you're not going anywhere. You know, the only time you can coast is downhill. And so plateaus are no good. You have to continue to grow. And that's why I keep reinventing myself. Because it keeps me interested, but you have to keep reinventing yourself to grow. So the thought that we can do things by ourselves is a really bad. Every great entertainer, athlete, business person, I mean, you name it, every one of them has coaches because there's a point where we run out of the fuel necessary to educate ourselves. And so my laboratory is by my clients. And if I do a workshop or a seminar or I'm coaching people, I learn more than anybody else because that's how I've organized myself. Then my antenna is up. but with the best of intentions, there's a limit to what you can do yourself.
Do you have a coach?
Yeah, I've had a coach. Yeah, she's inside. Yeah, we have a team.
Alan, can I take you to talking about team? I'm over here.
Yes. Okay, I'm trying to find out my screen is talking. Go ahead.
So you just said no one can do this on their own. And I just read, I'm sure, on a LinkedIn post just the other day, you commenting that you've never had a team or an employee. You've never had an employee. So what do you recommend in terms of a team to support someone doing the kind of work that you advocate for and coach people on?
You need external resources. You need an attorney, you need an accountant, you need a graphics designer, you need technology people, because you shouldn't be doing this yourselves, and so forth. And all of those people are outsiders who I pay. They charge me a fee and I pay them. I've never had an employee. I don't believe in advisory councils. And I don't believe in anybody who's on staff. When I've used subcontractors, I've used them situationally. You're on this project for 3 weeks. And I calculated once that if I had bought an office, if I had rented an office, and paid the insurance and utilities and all that kind of stuff, over about 20 years, it would have cost me $450,000. And over that 20 years, I sent my two kids through private school, kindergarten through college, and it cost $450,000.
Yeah, contractors win. Hey, Alan, I'm very mindful of time, and we're so grateful. Like, you fired through a lot of questions today.
Yeah, the time flew. You folks were great. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, ditto. They're awesome. So we're just going to promote your book, The Consulting Bible. That's one of the 4 books coming out this year. Everyone's just reading their books. And Life Storming. We've also got $1 Million Consulting.
Life Storming is about control. Yeah. So listen, I want to leave you with this, if I may. No pre-pandemic strategy is effective anymore. Not for any business, not for any organization, not for any individual. No pre-pandemic strategy is effective. Disruption and volatility are offensive weapons, not something to be feared. And so that's how you go forward today. Okay. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.